spoilers? Oh, lots and lots of spoilers.
Welcome, my fellow citizens, to Max Mike Movies and our continuing series, Semi-Real People, the biopic movies. This week, we're discussing a very recent work, 2020's Mank. The story behind that hack writer Herman Mankiewicz's screenplay of the movie Citizen Kane. That well-known slanderous hatchet job who did on one of the greatest men of the 20th century. Hang on, as you know, I'm referring to William Randolph Hearst, who was so terribly and unjustly savaged in that B-movie by that ungrateful wretch, Orson Wells, an unwatchable movie that I am sure... Shut up!
How can
Do you have any idea how powerful the Hearst organization still is? They could crush us like bugs! Like bugs! I've already gotten threatening letters. They're watching the house.
Max?
You know they have ways of monitoring all forms of media to determine if anyone anywhere is saying anything about William Randolph Hearst. They don't care how few listeners we have. They'll destroy us. I can't go back to prison, Mike. I won't last.
Max,
I won't.
Max, you got everything wrong, and you've never been to prison.
Well, I was in Wisconsin once. Doesn't that count?
We'd like to apologize to all cheeseheads everywhere for Max's little slip about Wisconsin being a prison.
Okay, so, assuming that the black van outside is not actually from the Hearst Group...
It says UPS on it, Max.
Oh, yeah.
And it's brown.
Hi, Glenn. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. We are discussing 2020's Mank, the movie about the creation, or the screenplay anyway, of Citizen Kane by legendary Hollywood writer Herman Mankiewicz. I am your paranoid host, Max Foster Levine.
What's behind you?
And over there in his puffy director's pants is Cecil B. DeMike Luce.
We need another take, yeah?
DeMille wasn't German.
I know, but you said...
Oh, that's true. The puffy pants guy, that was, von Stroheim, yeah.
That's what I thought you were telling
okay.
Me, but the joke thing. Anyway. No bumpy bucks for me.
Yeah.
So, Mank.
Mank.
I'm betting that we have something else first.
We do. We have our poll question.
Ooh, our poll
question. Yes, that can let you just rake in the bumpy bucks.
Ooh, rake them in.
This week, sometimes a movie, this may come as a great shock to people who have been swallowed by the illusion, a movie series recasts a major character. Oh, yes, this is true. Every so often, in the middle of a series of movies, or not a remake, we're not counting remakes, and we're not counting James Bond, because, that pretty much happens all the time. But often a character is recast for various reasons. Is there any example where it's worked really well for you, or that it's been a complete failure? Val Kilmer is Batman.
Yeah, not George Clooney, because that was great.
Well, yeah, but the Val Kilmer was the first, but of the embarrassing ones, I think.
So I'd just like to point something out, if I may.
Sure.
Usually we like to talk about last week's poll question first, and then we get to...
Well, I'm a rebel, and I'll never be any good.
I am rescinding all your bumpy bucks. You will no longer receive your free Bumpy Hut catalog with which you can spend your bumpy bucks.
But I was only 50,000 bumpy bucks away from the smoking jacket.
Bumpy Hut, it's a thing. So what is last week's poll question, and what cool, amazing answers from our cool, amazing listeners did we get?
We got some very interesting responses. Last week, the basic sum-up is, should directors be allowed to go back and change their movies after they're released? Should there be a director's cut? Should there be a Snyder cut? Should Greedo shoot first or Hand shoot first?
No, yes.
Yeah. And we got a few answers. One from one of our more genetically related listeners, Val.
Never heard of it.
Yep, she basically says flat out, no. They had the... Yep, so there you have it.
No.
They had the chance to do it their way the first time. Now, if a different director wanted to have a shot at a movie, I'd say maybe, depending on who and which movie. Like, it might be interesting to see what Baz Luhrmann could do with A New Hope. I would pay to see that. I would see Baz Luhrmann's Star Wars A New Hope.
I would totally go see that. Go see that. Although, wait, did he have anything to do with cats?
No.
Okay,
no, he
good.
did not.
Well, that's a point in his favor, isn't it?
He was sensible enough to keep us several continents away from that stinkburger.
Okay.
Yeah. Our international contingent, Vince, says, as a thought experiment, I think creators can do whatever they want with their creations, including change and update parts later on. The original Star Trek series remastered with new effects is awesome. They did it right. In my opinion, I like the director's cut of Blade Runner, especially without the horrible narration. I can see Lucas wanting to update effects in the original Star Wars, but he went so much further than that and added so much stuff that just added nothing and takes away from a great film just because he could. So theoretically not off the table for me, but it seems like a bad idea in most cases. And if they do it, the original should still be available somehow.
Yeah, George was real good about that.
And from our legal contingent, Dave, as he puts, specifically for the bumpy bucks, I've never had much patience with director's cuts. They seem like a gimmick to sell DVDs. That said, Blade Runner is the obvious exception. I was also happy with the idea that Peter Jackson added more scenes to The Lord of the Rings, but I never watched in general. In general, no point to redoing a film.
Okay. So I'd say, and it seems that our listeners would, for the most part, say no.
Yeah, it seems to be that most of them are not in favor of the director's cut or the director redoing the film. How do you feel about it?
Well, I have to point something out real quick. When they say the two people, I think this case it was Vince and Dave, that they don't mind the director's cut of Blade Runner, we are talking about the 1991, not really a director's cut of Blade Runner, not the final cut, which was a director's cut, because that one has the narration in it, and it is in fact wrong. I don't go for it. I'm kind of with my sister. It's like, with Star Trek was a really interesting case because literally all they did was go in and try to spruce it up. Because the original effects on TOS, quite honestly, are terrible. They weren't great then, and they really look terrible now. And what they tried to do is they tried to go, what are the shots they were going for? What was the idea they were going for? We'll just replace that. And in some cases they couldn't even replace. So there's some phaser shots and stuff between characters that are still the way they were. But they would do things like they would add atmosphere to the planets, so the sets looked a little bit less like sets. On the episode Amok Time, we get a faraway shot of the rest of Vulcan with some characters walking towards that little area they go to, which again all it does is try to make things feel a little bit more real. That's it. Lucas, effects, I'm going to change everything. And we leave out Spielberg. He did the same thing with Close Encounters. All those bad FBI guys who are having running around with all their guns were suddenly flashlights.
E.T. That's E.T.
Was it E.T.? Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Suddenly flashlights, because government...
Or walkie-talkies, yes.
Yeah.
Too scary to have guns, yeah. Not like government agents ever carry guns.
Yeah, and I didn't watch I didn't watch the original cut of Justice League because I heard nothing good about it. And hey, that's what I heard about the Snyder cut. And I just... No, because it's like if that's when you start changing things and you can't trust anything that you saw, especially if there's going to be a series. Once you start backpedaling and going, well... It is true from a certain point of view. That's BS, and I don't buy it. How about you?
Yeah. I don't like the idea of it, but not for that kind of reason or the quality. I don't like the idea that the director is the only one who gets to decide that. I don't buy the idea that the director is the only one who owns the film, who creates the film. What about the writer? What about the lead actors? What about the cinematographers or the sound guy, the people who write the score? I think if they all got together and said, we want to redo this, maybe, but I don't like the idea that the director just decides this is entirely my creation and I will alter it any way I see fit, because it isn't.
Well, now, just out of curiosity, was your opinion at all colored by this week's movie, perchance?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. It's just an interesting parallel.
No, I get that, but no. It does. I don't like the idea of the director as monolith. He isn't. The director isn't the god of the movie. He does a great deal. He puts his own or she puts their own stamp on it. But they aren't. It's not the sole creation. Eric von Stroheim can kiss my ass when he was like, "The movie is mine."
I mean, he's no Otto Preminger who shows up as Mr. Freeze, but then again, who is?
Hey, Otto Preminger gets a lot of points for being a Batman villain. I'm sorry.
So does Tallulah Bankhead.
Oh, Tallulah Bankhead is a goddess.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems like, in general, we don't care for we get to go back and keep fixing it routine.
So, you hear that, Hollywood? Stop it.
Yeah.
There, we fixed it.
Yeah. And if you're going to do it, we need to have the original version available. And we would like a decent print, thank you, not one that was made literally on a Super 8 camera in somebody's garage. George Lucas, I'm looking at you. Because the re-release of the original theatrical version of A New Hope, which it wasn't called at that point, is literally one of the worst prints I've ever seen put to DVD. And I include Science Crazed in that, so yeah. All right, well, people can contact us with their answers for this week's poll question. We'll go over that at the end of the show, as usual. But, Max, could there be any trivia at all about Mank?
Could be. Ooh. But first, I'd like to list all of the wonderful humanitarian deeds done by William Randolph Hearst in his lifetime. There, I'm done. Now, sorry, that's not entirely fair, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, okay. I have a story.
No trivia.
The show.
The budget for this movie was $25 million. The box office is kind of hard to determine because it was only released, this was during the pandemic. So it was released in about 5 theaters. But if you count, I think in terms of views or some such, they're estimating the take of about $122 million.
$50 billion bucks to Griffin Puff. Griffin Puff wins.
Yeah, pretty much making it up at this point.
Yeah.
It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, which, by the way, Citizen Kane was nominated for 9.
Oh, burn.
And Citizen Kane only won 1, whereas Mank won 2.
Burn!
Of course, they won for production design and cinematography. Yeah, which, let's face it, nobody cares. It was nominated for Best Picture and Best Actor and Best Supporting Actress for Amanda Seyfried. But it won those 2. Gary Oldman wanted to wear this elaborate prosthetic makeup to look more accurately like Herman Mankiewicz, because Gary Oldman looks nothing like Herman Mankiewicz if you ever see any of the pictures. I mean, you're not really going to look at Gary Oldman and go, Jewish fella? But actually, the director, David Fincher, persuaded him that they wanted not to, because he wanted to use minimal makeup to get an intimate performance. It's hard to do a lot of close-ups when you're wearing a lot of prosthetics. They tend to be pretty obvious.
I think they did just fine in the Churchill film.
That was that's a point. The script was written by David Fincher's late father, Jack Fincher. This was filmed, by the way, on this fancy 8K cameras. No color version of this film exists. This film was just shot in black and white. Jack Fincher is, David Fincher is an interesting director. He's, let's say he's had kind of a mixed career.
Oh, I'm actually a big fan of some of his earlier work.
Oh, he did Fight Club.
Oh, no, earlier than that.
7, he did that.
I'm particularly thrilled with his music videos for Rick Springfield.
Yes, he did that. He started out as a music video director. He did it for all like Aerosmith and Rick Springfield. But yeah, he did 7. He did Fight Club. He directed The Social Network, which we talked about.
Yep.
He did other biopics like Zodiac.
He is a working class dog. That one's for my sister. That's a deep one.
He also did The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and Alien 3.
Well.
Yeah, like I say, they can't all be great.
I think that's the one we generally refer to as Aliens, right?
Yes.
The first Aliens is.
Aliens is. There's a scene in Mank where Mank is visiting Irving Thalberg, and Thalberg alerts his secretary to never allow the Marx Brothers in his office again. This was based on a lot of this movie, by the way. We'll get to this. Is pretty accurate. Some of it isn't, but a lot. This is based on the fact that Thalberg would meet with the Marx Brothers a lot because they worked for MGM, and he used to really piss them off because he would postpone meetings or just leave early in the middle of one. So in retaliation, one day Thalberg came back for a meeting with them, and he found them in his secretary's office, stark naked, roasting potatoes by the fireplace. This is why he says the office smells like summer. Yeah. That sequence where Mank is passing out, dropping a bottle of liquor from his hand, and it falls to the floor and rolls, that is a very direct cinematographic, I don't know, nod to the snow globe opening scene from Citizen Kane. He eventually, Mank did, by the way, was a regular at San Simeon, the stately home of Charles Foster William Randolph Hearst. Mm-hmm. And he was eventually banned, not because of his political rants. By the way, that entire, which we'll talk about later, that whole rant he goes on at the end of the film, the Don Quixote speech, completely made up. That never happened. But apparently he used to encourage Marion Davies to drink, so Hearst didn't want him around.
I kind of got the impression that he encouraged, everyone to drink.
Yeah. Marion Davies, by the way, was a major film star from about 1917 to 1937 and was ranked the #1 female box office star in 1923. Theater owners called her the Queen of the Screen. She was a write-in candidate for Best Actress for the Oscar in 1934 for Peg O' My Heart, which I'm sure you remember.
Oh, yeah, that was the one with the peg and the heart in it.
Exactly. Of course, that year there were only 3 nominees in that category. She ranked as one of MGM's most popular stars for the 10 years she was with that studio. She also claims in her memoir to have never seen Citizen Kane.
Well, she didn't have to. She read the script.
Yeah. For our listeners, Marion Davies, who was William Randolph Hearst's main squeeze, who was about 300 years younger than he was, people have always assumed that whatever her name is in Citizen Kane, which I've honestly forgotten, Charles Foster Kane's girlfriend, the showgirl, was based on her. Mankiewicz has always insisted it was not based on her, but based on people's idea of her.
Which makes sense, because if you've seen Citizen Kane, and if this film is depicting Marion Davies anything close to realistic, they're blonde. That's about as far as I'd go.
They're blonde and they're from Brooklyn, although Marion Davies allegedly had no trace of a Brooklyn accent.
Not anymore.
She worked really hard to erase it.
Sorry.
Oddly, the other thing is the ages in this. Marion Davies was actually almost a year older than Herman Mankiewicz.
Oh.
But Amanda Seyfried is 27 years younger than Gary Oldman.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, Gary Oldman is 62 in this movie, and he's trying to play 43.
Yeah, he's well named, I should point out.
Yeah. The score is by Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails and Atticus Ross. It's very different from anything they had ever done before. It's not electronic at all.
No.
It's using period authentic instruments and sounds. It's very jazzy, sort of 30s and 40s cinematic. Right from the start, Reznor said it was a whole new set of challenges for them.
Yeah, more likely than not, he did what he usually did, which was, well, I've done this, now I need to go make a Nine Inch Nails album to get this out of my system.
Yeah,
wow,
probably.
So Trent Reznor and Atticus Finch. Wow, that's...
Atticus Ross!
Huh?
Atticus Ross, not the guy from To Kill a Mockingbird.
That's just a reference.
Yep.
It won't hurt.
There's a bunch of other stuff. There was a lot of stuff behind the screens, but that's pretty much that's the gist of it.
Hey Max, would you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Would you recount the plot for me? Tell me a story, Max.
No.
Oh, come on!
Don't wanna.
You've only done it 142 times before this.
The sum up is very short. It tells the story of the struggles of a legendary Hollywood screenwriter, Herman Mankiewicz, with Orson Wells, to an extent, writing the screenplay for the classic film Citizen Kane. We see Mank struggle with his drinking, his recklessness, his compulsive gambling, and his own growing cynicism all the while crafting one of the greatest stories ever put on screen. We also see his friendship with various other screenwriters and his growing closeness with Marion Davies and his deepening hatred for the publishing magnate William Randolph Hearst, a man so mean he once shot a man for snoring.
The look and feel of real hand-tooled saddle leather. Is that the end of your...
That's it. That's all I got.
Well, then I guess we should talk about this here film starting...
Yep.
Now. The Lowdown.
First off, I do want to say one thing. Mankiewicz is also... It is accurate. Mankiewicz wrote this screenplay while his leg, after being in a terrible car accident, his leg was basically shattered.
Yikes.
And he was in a half-body cast. He had to have the leg suspended. Oddly enough, despite all of his drinking, the accident was not his fault. He wasn't driving the car.
No. Oh, I forget who it was supposed to be. Some kid with a love letter, at least in this film.
I don't think it matters.
No.
Yeah.
They weren't important.
But, yes, he's tended by a German nurse, Frau Blucher, and an English woman who is played by Lily Collins' eyebrows.
Put that in there.
Yeah. Sorry, Lily Collins may be a competent actor, but I can never quite forgive her for the Snow White movie she made.
Oh.
Where she was sort of challenging Kristen Stewart for least facial expressions in any movie.
Line.
Yeah, pretty much.
Line.
I gotta say, his wife, Mankiewicz's wife, Sarah, or Poor Sarah, as she's often introduced. By the way, that was true. He used to make jokes about that people always referred to his wife as Poor Sarah, being married to that Herman Mankiewicz.
Oh, okay.
She has played... I honestly want to marry this woman because of her name. She has the most English name, the most wonderfully English name I have ever heard. Her name is Tuppence Middleton. How cool is that? Tuppence Middleton. Oh,
I mean,
I want to be named Tuppence Middleton.
Treacle tarts. Yeah. Okay.
That is so English. You can hear the bangers and mash. And
ooh, I love bangers and mash.
God Save the Queen playing in the background.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. You're bringing up actors. Let's talk a little bit about the performances. I mean, surprise, I adore Gary Oldman.
Oh, Gary Oldman can do anything.
And I would just like to say, seeing him without makeup was really weird. Like, I'm so used to seeing him in some kind of appliance or some, like,
crazy
hemisphere
hairstyle,
of clear plastic on his head, or something weird. Yep. Or he's a white peacock. Yep, and seeing just Gary it was a little weird. And I'm like, wait, what? Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, your first thought is, my God, what did they do to him? Oh, nothing. That's really him.
Age. Well, especially because a couple of weeks ago we were watching him as Sid Vicious. And it's like, wait, that guy and this guy are the same guy. Yeah, they are. Yeah. Although they both drink the same. I will say, I honestly think that he's too old to play the part, which is weird because he is beyond capable. You've got to... His voice is totally different. Like, this is not a voice I have heard out of Gary Oldman before. I don't know what he did, but... totally different. And he is able to sling that verbal hash, like, if that's how Mank actually talked, and they're just... Are there any people like that anymore? I don't think there are.
I don't think so. No, it's the same. Dalton Trumbo was the same way. They had very similar speech intonations. If you ever listen to the recordings, they sound very similar. I don't know if it's because they all took the same kind of elocution classes, like you told me once.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the women from the 30s and 40s movies, they had that sort of Katharine Hepburn rapid style speaking because that's how they were taught to speak.
It was the Mid-Atlantic accent. It was taught
Mid-Atlantic,
in schools.
Yeah,
my mother was taught that accent. Mm-hmm. Do they have any connection with the Algonquin Round Table, Dorothy Parker, that whole group? Because, dear God, doesn't he feel like one of those people?
He does, but no, that was a very specific group in, I believe, upstate New York. And I don't
Benchley
think...
was one?
Yep, Robert Benchley was there. Oh, boy.
Those are the only two I
Parker.
remember.
Yeah, Dorothy Parker, Robert Benchley. Oh, I used to know a whole bunch of them.
Very erudite and incredibly sharp group of people. And I don't mean that just in that they were smart. I mean, like, I don't even think you could approach them and say hello and not get something stinging back at you.
No, they would absolutely, they would rip anybody apart. Allegedly at the Algonquin, no waiter ever wanted to wait on them.
Yeah.
First off, that round table was only supposed to sit like 4 or 5 people, and they'd fit like 12.
Yeah.
And it just infuriated the people there, and people were terrified of them.
Yeah.
Because you would, but.
Well, and it's part of that, I will say, there are parts in the film. I used earbuds to listen to this film. I actually wasn't starting to do so. But Mank's, like, his back talk and his amazing stream of language, I had to put earbuds in because I literally couldn't understand it. It was just
he talked very fast. By the way, just if to go back to that, in a way, there is a connection. One of the round table, I forgot this, was George S. Kaufman.
Okay.
Who is one of the writers we see at the table. And also, I mean, Harpo Marx, he showed up. He was sort of a peripheral member. Tallulah Bankhead, Noel Coward.
Yeah, Harpo always had really intelligent things to say, like, you know.
Off screen, he was incredibly eloquent and incredibly erudite.
Yeah, sure, and
the reason they keep
too.
The reason they keep bringing up the Marx Brothers is one of Mankiewicz's most successful projects is he was the producer for 3 of the most successful and probably, I would say, the best of the Marx Brothers movies.
Let me see if I can guess. Wait, don't tell me.
Okay.
I'm going to guess Duck Soup.
Yep.
Night at the Opera.
Nope.
Oh. That now exhausts all the names of Marx Brothers movies I know.
Hooray for Captain Spaulding, the African Explorer.
I don't remember what that was called.
Monkey Business and Horse Feathers.
Oh, Coconuts is the other one I know.
No, Horse Feathers. Yeah.
No, but Coconuts is the other title I know. Okay.
Yeah.
Horse Feathers, like Bumpy. Okay. Yeah, because Mankiewicz is a name that's like, I've heard it, but I didn't know anything about him.
He didn't do all that many screenplays. They were right. After Citizen Kane, basically, Hearst crushed him. And he had alienated so many people that he did do a very he was not credited, I don't believe, but he did Pride of the Yankees. And they did, you know, they talk about that play he wrote, The Wild Man of Borneo, that made that into a movie.
Huh. Well, there's also the bit where apparently, for whatever reason, when he joined the Mercury Theater Players, he signed away his ability to get credit on his scripts.
Yeah.
And supposedly, while working for Orson, he said, well, that still counts with this movie you're going to do. Yeah, boy, I love the opening of the film where it's like, yes, they've given Orson Welles carte blanche. Oh, are you going to regret that?
Yeah, and they did, although Citizen Kane made him a lot of money.
Not initially.
But also, there's a little in-joke where he's saying, oh, God, Wizard of Oz is going to sink that studio. Mankiewicz was an uncredited writer on Wizard of Oz.
That film, so we're not going to go into this, but that film had 3 directors, I don't know how many writers. That movie was a mess.
Yeah.
And we have some friends that are real Oz fanatics, and they would be able to tell these stories better than I can. But basically, I forget who was actually was it Victor Fleming was finally listed as the director?
I think so.
But he came in he was like the last minute, and it's like... Yeah. That film was crazy, getting that thing done. There were so many issues, and the poor woman who played the witch got burned badly, and had to come back.
Buddy Ebsen almost died from the Tin Man makeup.
Yeah, it was it was nuts. 3 directors in 1939. That didn't happen. A whole bunch of crap with that. But yeah, Mank is to be fair, Dalton Trumbo was not a name that I had really heard. And when I saw that film, if you haven't seen the film, I think it's just called Trumbo. It stars Bryan Cranston, who does a very good job, especially if you're used to seeing him as the dad in Malcolm in the Middle.
or on Breaking Bad, yeah.
Right. The guy's showing he's way more than a sitcom actor. And of course, he's now proven that very well. But Trumbo, if you like old Golden Age Hollywood stuff, Trumbo was one of the actors that was blacklisted because of the Stupid House on American Committee, and that was a really good film. I liked that film too, so you can check that out. But yeah, Orson Welles being given carte blanche. I think the guy who plays Orson Welles, all things considered, does a pretty decent job.
I think he does a really good job, especially if you ever see some of the footage of Welles as a young man. He was very good looking, very dynamic, and he had a foul temper.
Yeah.
He would just go off. He had real rage issues. The guy, I'd never heard of this guy. What was it, Bobby First, I think?
Okay.
He does a really good job. I got to say, one of my favorite castings in this is Charles Dance as William Randolph Hearst. You know, that's Tywin friggin' Lannister as Hearst. And he, first of all, it's like, wait, what happened to your accent?
Yeah.
This man, he nails the American accent.
Which is not usually the case.
Yeah, but he does a great job. And he's not even on screen that much. No. But he gets that same kind of low-level crazy that Hearst gave off, that that menace. Because Hearst was apparently, he could be really nice, and he could be really terrifying. William Randolph Hearst, I'm sorry, we got to talk a little bit about him. I'm not going to do too much, because that's an entire series in itself. We talk about media power nowadays. We talk about Sumner Redstone. We talk about Ted Turner or even Roger Ailes. Sorry, I can't help gloating a little.
Or Rupert Murdoch, yeah.
Rupert Murdoch. They were friggin' children compared to William Randolph Hearst. William Randolph Hearst controlled the media. We don't think of it much because it was before television, but he was master of the radio. He controlled an enormous amount of print media. This is the guy who sent someone down to report on the Spanish-American War. The guy said to him, "There's no war. What are you talking about?" He said, "Get down there. I'll manufacture the war." And he did. Yeah. He basically, through the media, created an entire war.
Yeah.
And he would destroy anybody he didn't like. He was... Oh, boy. And apparently the portrayal of him in Citizen Kane is uncomfortably on target.
Well, even that, he just gives that Tywin Lannister look. Like, he doesn't say anything in that big scene at the end where Mank is going off crazy and, quite honestly, inventing what will eventually be the plot for Citizen Kane as compared to a Don Quixote story, which itself is really cool. But there he is. Tywin is just given that look like, yeah, it's a nice day for a blood wedding. I know he wasn't at the blood wedding, but it's still like just... Yeah, I wonder if the guy's probably really, really nice and just had... Because I found that with, like, the woman who played... who was the woman in Harry Potter who came in with all the rules and the cats and the... Oh God. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. She made all the rules.
Damn it.
She was just this horrible, horrible person. I saw her on this show, this other British show. She's the nicest, most pleasant.
She's adorable.
She's so nice. And I bet this guy, too, he's just like, oh, would you like some tea?
I have no idea what Charles Dance is like, but I'm guessing he's not at all like that. But his performance is terrific.
Yeah.
And I think everybody... I love the guy playing... That was supposed to be John Houseman, you know, like the paper chase guy.
Yeah. He was way too nice. Well, talking about Hearst real quick, I promised this last week, and I don't want to forget it. So I have actually met William Randolph Hearst III a number of times.
How did that happen?
You won't believe it. He used to come into the comic book store.
I don't believe it.
No, and I wouldn't know who he was, but of course he paid with a credit card. And there it was. I don't think there's probably too many people named William Randolph Hearst III. He would come in.
Nope.
And he would hang out for a long time just reading comics. And he used to come in early in the morning. And he showed up probably 3 or 4 times. And once I saw his credit card, he would walk in and I would greet him by name. He was nice. I would say, "Oh, how are you doing, Mr. Hearst?" And it's like, "Good. How are you doing?" And
you didn't address him as Mr. Hearst III?
Well, no, just Mr. Hearst. But there was one very potentially embarrassing moment. The owner of the store, Tony, had a TV, which was only supposed to be used for when he was watching baseball games or basketball, whatever he wanted. We weren't supposed to really have it on while we were open. Well, spoiler, I did.
Yeah.
And one of the shows I liked to watch that was on in the mornings when we were open was The Dick Van Dyke Show. Well, there's a certain episode of that show which isn't really connected to Randolph Hearst, but it kind of is. It's an episode where Richie's trying to find out what his middle name is, and he wonders why his middle name is, in fact, Rosebud.
Oh.
And that was on one day when Mr. Randolph Hearst III came in, and I was just sitting there cringing. He never seemed to notice, but I was just like, oh my God, why did it have to be this episode?
Oy.
But yeah, so my run-ins with William Randolph Hearst III.
Cool.
Nice guy. That's all I can say. Don't know anything
That
about
guy
him other than that.
didn't try to destroy you. That's cool.
No. And hopefully this will assuage some of the attempts he might... I don't even know if he's still alive. Who knows? But...
I gotta say, I really like the way this movie is shot. I like even the opening credits, which are done in the old-timey 30s and 40s credits font, even the way they're angled in the picture. I thought that looked great. And when they do the movie is non-chronological. It jumps back and forth between the quote-unquote present day of about, 1940?
Yep.
Yeah, 1940 and about 1932 to 1934. And when they switch,
37.
you get actual word...
It goes up to 37.
37, excuse me. When they switch between, when they do the flashback, you see like the credits in a screenplay.
Yeah.
Interior, so and so's office, 1932 in parenthesis flashback.
And I really appreciated that because otherwise, so this is the problem again with Gary Oldman in this part. I love Gary Oldman. I think he does a great job. I don't believe for an instance when I find out at the end that he was 43. I'm like, what? Because
The only way I could see it is, he had prematurely aged because of all the drinking.
Yeah.
Because he really drank. Mankiewicz really drank a lot, and apparently all that stuff he drank. He was also not just a compulsive gambler, but a dumb gambler, a bad gambler. He lost a lot of money on really stupid bets, betting on coin flips when a leaf would hit the ground, betting on an election when it was almost over.
Yeah.
That part wasn't true, by the way. That whole thing of him being obsessed with Upton Sinclair running for governor, that they made up. He didn't particularly care. He was actually fairly conservative politically.
Oh, how bizarre! Because that's a major part of the film.
Yeah, no, he didn't. Wasn't interested in that at all. He barely followed it. Yeah, but it's a major point. Upton Sinclair, who is a very famous writer, ran for governor of California in '34, and got pretty well stomped, largely because, well, he was up against a Republican, and the Republican was backed by William Randolph Hearst and by the studios, who put out these. This is true, by the way. They did put out these fake newsreels.
That would never happen again.
Oh, certainly not. No.
Yeah.
Upton Sinclair. I didn't know he ran for governor. I only knew him as the guy who wrote The Jungle. He was like the first muckraker, and he was very.
Upton Sinclair was the first muckraker, or was that William Randolph Hearst?
Well, he was the one who... No, that was actually... They coined the term about him, muckraker, because of Upton Sinclair.
Either that or Joe Pulitzer, but you'd have to see Newsies to really understand that.
Yeah.
Because I'm carrying the banner.
It's a fine life.
There was a very weird little addition to this film. I don't know if you noticed it or not. The technical term, or at least the jargon for them, is cigarette burns. Did you notice them?
No, I don't think I did.
So we haven't seen these in a theater for decades, and the reason is that they no longer have multiple reels for films.
Oh, is that the little circle in the upper right?
Yes.
Or upper left? Yeah.
They had them in this film.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
I did, and I'm like, why do you have those? So for those who don't know, the films you've seen for the last 30 years are all on this thing called a platter system. The whole film is on one giant platter. It runs through all, then they rewind it, everything's done. In the old days, up through like the 70s or even into the 80s, films were shipped on multiple reels. And what would happen is, as you got towards the end of the reel, there's two projectors back there, and a proper projectionist has to get the timing right. So you'd see this little thing in the upper right-hand corner. There's two of them. The first one is sort of a solid circle, which looks kind of like a cigarette burn. That's telling you, hey, get ready. And then the next one is a ring. And the ring is when you're supposed to switch from one projector to the other. I guess it's to make it feel like an old-timey movie, but I was like, why are those there? That's weird.
Considering that's all it's all on a hard drive now.
Yeah. It's like I would be willing to bet the whole film was shot digitally. It wouldn't surprise me if it was. But
sure.
It was just like, okay.
The thing was shot in 8K. I don't think you can do that with film.
No.
But yeah.
You hold it up to the light. So this feels very Hollywood. Right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it is. It's about Hollywood.
But the film feels very Hollywood, and by that I mean manufactured. And when I'm finding out from you that the whole politics thing wasn't even true, that's... I mean, that really colors the character because it's a major part. That's sort of... We're given the idea that that's a major part of why he writes Citizen Kane in the first place. Right? And, supposedly... I mean, everybody knew it was Hearst, even though it wasn't Hearst. His name is Kane, not Hearst. But everybody knew.
He didn't like the fact that Hearst interfered in politics. But also, Mankiewicz was a massive cynic. He wasn't surprised by any of this. The person he really didn't like was Louis B. Mayer. I love his line. This is an actual quote from Mankiewicz. Then they asked, what do you think of Louis B. Mayer? He said, if I ever go to the electric chair, I'd like him to be sitting on my lap.
Wow. He felt a little caricaturist to me, but he's also well written.
Not a lot. L.B. Mayer, first off, was very larger than life. He was very loud. He was one of that, and I can say this, those old Jew movie studio runners.
I can't say that.
Him and Jack Warner and Samuel Goldwyn. L.B. Mayer was probably the loudest. He was also, from what I've read and what I've heard, a solid 24-carat bastard. Mm. He was a really not a nice person at all, and he was incredibly chintzy, and he did in fact, make it. He made all the people go on half salary during the Depression. He did not, by the way, and he did not return. As he said, he paid them back for it. He never did.
He didn't?
And it got even worse a few years later in the McCarthy hearings, where basically him and Jack Warner, they just rolled over for the House Un-American Activities Committee. Yeah, let's not get into it. He was
probably funded.
He was a schmuck. He was one of those people in when they're part of your either ethnic or cultural group. You just wish they weren't. It's just like, oh, God, why did he have to be Jewish? I feel that way about Roy Cohn. Why? I just don't want him to be.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I was saying it was Hollywoodish. The film feels Hollywoodish. It actually reminded me of another film about semi-old Hollywood, told in black and white very much the same way. I don't know if you got this vibe or not, but it actually felt a little Tim Burton-ish. It felt a little like Ed Wood.
Oh, I didn't get that at all. It didn't have that cartoonish feel.
Parts of it to me did. Parts of it, I mean, we have to believe that there were people at one time in ancient history that could actually put together sentences like that, because there certainly aren't any people like that around now. At least I don't know of any. But the byplay, the timing, the ability to be so whip crap smart, and erudite, overusing that word. I mean, that's one of the reasons is eventually people just stopped wanting to lose to Mank in any kind of verbal exchange, I'm sure is part of it. And also, he wasn't wrong.
No, Mankiewicz was incredibly smart. His brother, by the way, they'd say was smarter. Joe was way shrewder. He was also much more of a political animal. He knew what to do.
And apparently 40 years younger. Oops!
Yeah, I gotta say his brother looks a heck of a lot younger than him.
Yeah, well, his wife does, everybody. And it's so weird because I'm sitting there, in awe of his performance. It's literally just visually, I don't buy it. Otherwise, it is another great Gary Oldman performance. I've yet to see a bad one. I liked him in Fifth Element, which is, I'm sure, a film he'd like to forget. I even like him as the Peacock. I don't care.
He's great. He's great in Kung Fu Panda too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Amanda Seyfried as Marion Davies. I thought she was terrific.
She was great.
And I like the byplay between the two of them. It's so sweet, and yet there's nothing romantic about it. And apparently there was not, even though in reality they were much closer in age. But they were just pals. They genuinely liked each other, even though neither one really understood the other. Mm. And Amanda Seyfried just comes across as very likable. This is the second time I've seen Marion Davies portrayed on film. And she's always just very likable in both. The other was in this movie, not a lot of people saw it, I think, called The Cat's Meow.
Nope.
Which is, again, about William Randolph Hearst and Marion Davies. And she's played by Kirsten Dunst in that.
Oh. Interesting.
And
well, real quick, what's your favorite scene with her?
I like when they're walking through the zoo.
Yeah.
at San Simeon or Xanadu or whichever it is.
Xanadu.
And I like her, yelling at the monkeys, and he's making puns about the giraffes. And I just think that's really sweet. And sometimes he's carrying her shoes for her, or she's holding his hand. And it's just in that there's just you believe there's real non-sexual chemistry between them.
My favorite scene is when there's some sort of party, and she's like, "Oh, you remember? That's the time when you were talking to the president and laying out the cabinet for him."
Yeah, that's right.
And then she's like, "I don't know what I'm talking about." And it's like, "Oh, I bet that really happened." Okay.
Yeah, depending who you believe, their relationship, because William Randolph Hearst was approximately 340 years older than Marion Davies.
Yeah.
They claim, and she always claimed, that she actually loved him, that they had a real connection. Who knows? Nobody was ever going to say otherwise. They were too afraid of him, and she claimed that she really cared about him.
And what's her nickname for him? Pops.
Yeah, Pops. Hey, at least she had no illusions.
Yeah. We got to get to our questions because we got to get through those. I have a couple extra ones, too, if we have time. But real quick, the German village thing. So at one point, it's stated that Mankiewicz actually brought over an entire German village from Germany just before things got really dicey. Do you know if that was true?
It's not exactly. It's close. He didn't bring over, like, an entire village, but he did support bringing over a lot of German Jewish refugees.
Okay.
He gave to the charities. He actually gave money to the refugees himself. Now, he did. He helped a lot, but he didn't it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that he saved an entire village, but probably several hundred people.
Yeah, he saved all of Krankenheim. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, questions.
Yeah.
What do we know about Mank from this movie? Max, what do we know about him? I can sum it up in 2 words.
I think he may have liked his liquor.
Yes, my sum up was Mank drank.
Drank. We eat. Yeah, basically, I think we learned that he was a very, in some ways, self-destructive man.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that he drinks a lot, and it's not just that he gambles, but he has no internal censor.
No.
I mean, Marion Davies says that you just say whatever comes into your head. And it gets him in a lot of trouble with incredibly powerful people. And he doesn't have to, because he's just wants... You get the feeling some of it isn't just because he wants it to be true. He wants everyone to know he's right.
Yeah.
And it makes no difference.
Well,
it's
I think
really
also
kind of sad.
He's surrounded by people that, quite honestly, are not his intellectual equals. Never mind, better than him. It's sad to find out that his brother Joe is smarter. Maybe that's the only indication we get that he's smarter is Joe doesn't say very much.
Joe gets, Joe, as he talks about, he gets fired because he explained he made an intellectual pun, and it made the other people feel stupid.
Yeah. We know Mank drank. We know that he was an incredibly skillful screenwriter. We know that he took what was basically a story approach that no one was going to watch and made it something that people wanted to watch. Now, to be fair, I believe the initial release of Citizen Kane was not particularly profitable. I think it's one of those films that did well over a long period of time. And of course, for a long time, it was called the greatest film ever made, which, if we have time, we can talk about. We don't know anything about his early life. We don't really know a lot about his career except for this. This is it. Like, he peaks, and then they tell us at the end, that was it. And after that, he basically slid for 11 years into a deepening pool of scotch.
Died at age 55 from kidney failure brought on by acute alcohol abuse. Yeah.
Now, you answered this for me. How accurate was the depiction?
Some of it is, some of it isn't. One of the plot points they bring in is he didn't want to join the Writers Guild. He was really anti-union.
Interesting.
He didn't believe in them at all. Yeah. But a lot of the rest, there was some that was, some that wasn't, and a lot of it was dramatized more than it was. But a lot of it is pretty solid.
Just not anything to do with the politics. Apparently, it wasn't.
Not so much. But then, in terms of the blessing of the Mankiewicz family, at the end when they're announcing the winner for Best Screenplay at the Oscars, the guy reading that is Herman Mankiewicz's grandson.
Oh, interesting. I thought it was cool that they don't show the acceptance speech, quote unquote, by Orson Wells. They don't show it, but I'm willing to bet that was the actual Orson Welles.
That's the actual recording of Orson Welles telling Mankiewicz to kiss his ass.
His hat. His hat.
His hat. Excuse me. We know what he meant. And I like Mankiewicz's response, which was, this word is accepted in the same way that the screenplay was written, with the absence of Orson Welles.
Yeah.
And he always maintained he wrote the whole thing. Wells says otherwise. Pauline Kael, the film critic, said that Mankiewicz really wrote the whole thing. People have argued that for years. I think that's been disproved. I think Wells did do a lot in the rewrites, but I'm not sure.
Well, and here's the thing. Why did Wells not want Mank to get credit? Because it would look bad for him? I don't know.
Well, again, I can't say for sure, but it's generally accepted because, well, you know that large car that Wells drives up in? Mm-hmm. He would have needed a moving van behind it to carry his ego.
Oh.
Yes.
That's what that smell was.
Yeah. He really loved being... He wanted it. That's why he always wanted carte blanche. He wanted his name on everything. He wanted it stuff to be his creation. And the guy was a genius. Although I got to tell you, at 24, that wasn't his first movie. I believe his first movie was the successful one was The Magnificent Ambersons.
Oh boy! And apparently they're working on a documentary about that, because that was I think The Magnificent Ambersons came after, because the reason I say that is because they ripped it apart. Like, they changed the ending. He went on vacation, and while he was gone, they edited it. And supposedly, there's actually a documentary being made about people still looking. Supposedly, an original cut of that film exists somewhere in South America. At least they're hoping so, because that's where he was on vacation, and supposedly there was an uncut version there.
Have you ever seen it?
I have not seen it, but Wells apparently kept saying, look, I'll edit it when I get back. Just... calm down. And the studio was like, yeah, we're not going to let him do this. And they cut it to shreds. Apparently what was a not happy ending became a happy ending. All that stuff. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have. And I remember thinking, this is what they're making such a big deal out of? I honestly thought it was kind of boring.
Yeah.
And it's very choppy. And it makes perfect sense now that it was edited by someone else and done badly.
Yeah, Touch of Evil is supposed to be an amazing film. I haven't seen it.
Touch of Evil, that came later, but you can tell because he has started to, shall we say, sample the wine before its time. And that's an amazing movie. It's not fun to watch, but it's really good.
My favorite performance of Orson Welles is actually in a film he did not direct. It's a film called The Third Man, and he's got a very small part, but he's great in it. Real quick before I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Yep,
Citizen Kane, you've seen it.
Yes.
Do you consider it the greatest film, or even the greatest American film ever made still? Assuming it was once.
Oh, boy. Certainly up to its point, I think it's certainly in the top 10. I think it is an amazing movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. I'd have to see it again to compare it to some of the ones that have come since, but I think it's certainly a contender for the best. The thing was not just revolutionary, but it's brilliant.
How would you pair it up against The Godfather, for example?
Very different kind of movie. Tighter.
Yeah.
More elegant. More artistically shot. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's close.
I mean, to be fair, Coppola had 30 years of experience, or not, he didn't have it, but the film industry had 30 years of experience and stuff to bestow on newer directors. So it's like, those superlatives never make sense to me. Greatest, best, whatever. It's like, in your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say it's certainly not the greatest comedy.
It's one of the greatest musicals ever made, don't you think?
There are a couple of songs in it.
Mr. Hurst, he came in first. Never mind.
Almost. There's a song praising him, and we do hear... Yeah, that's right. But, I'm not sure. That's something to consider.
You got any other notes you want to get to before we wrap this up?
Nope, I think we've covered it all.
Then we should stop now.
Yes.
The Roundup. and start now. Max,
Yeah.
you had not seen Mank before this show, or had
I
you?
had not. I had never seen it.
And
I
this
knew
is a
very little
Netflix
about
original, isn't it?
I believe it. Well, no, because it was released in the theaters. It was released.
It was produced by Netflix. So
Okay.
Just say yes.
Yes, Mike. It was a Netflix original.
I always listed as producer.
No, I actually always forget that Netflix actually makes movies that show in the theaters now.
But obviously just for Oscar time.
Yeah.
So what did you think?
Well, first off, I'm going in. That movie has a real advantage. I love movies about old Hollywood.
Yeah.
Even ones that are more silly, things like Hail Caesar. I mean, I always have kind of a mixed feelings because I love the magic of old Hollywood, and I also really like to see and really hate to see what went on behind the scenes because it's often so unpleasant and tawdry and petty, just like, everything else in the world. But I like it. I don't know about masterpiece or anything. I don't think it's up there with Citizen Kane, certainly. It's kind of choppy. Gary Oldman, you're right, looks too old. He is too old, man, to do this. Although, again, his performance is friggin' brilliant.
Yeah.
I think it's really well done. I think it's beautiful to look at. I think the use of black and white, I don't think it's just being gimmicky like a lot of them are. It's not just trying to be artsy. I think it works, and it's clearly being done as a tribute to the films of the time and to that era. That said, I think it felt a little long at times. I think it could have been tightened up. And there are a couple of, I like a lot of the performances. I'm just not a big fan of Lily Collins, who played, English lady. I thought she was kind of stiff and didn't make a lot of sense. The way she sort of gets warm, and the way she warms up to Mank, I don't see why. We don't really get an idea of that. I would have liked to see more of his wife. I thought Sarah looked like a really interesting character.
Poor Sarah.
What about you? What do you think?
I think it was uneven as well. Again, Gary Oldman, brilliant. I love Gary Oldman. Does feel too old, but his voice, his manner, he's never the same person. And I don't know how he does it. I mean, I've seen tons of actors, and I can, see them playing... Harrison Ford plays Harrison Ford. And it's fine, because we like Harrison Ford. That's what we want.
Yep.
And then you'll see some people who are a little better. People like Christian Bale can do the same thing. It's like... But even some of his vocal mannerisms and his facial expressions carry over from one character to another. Not a lot of them. And he's a really good actor. Gary Oldman, I swear, is just a different person in a Gary Oldman suit. I don't know how he does it. I love him. He does visually look too old for the part. And that being said, I kind of don't care because he's carrying off this type of person that doesn't exist anymore. Why? Because we don't trust smart people. That's why. We're in the dark ages. If you didn't know that, we are. Some stuff felt a little caricature-y to me. And then it's like it's light and fluffy, and then it gets kind of serious. I enjoyed the film. I would probably put it in the B range somewhere. It's a little better than a Rick Springfield video. I'll give it that.
It's certainly better than Aliens is.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff they do throw in is a little like the director Sheldon, the guy who creates the fake newsreel and kills himself.
Yeah.
Spoiler. That guy was fictional. The director, the guy who created it was a guy named Felix Weiss Jr., and he felt bad but didn't shoot himself.
So it's kind of almost like they are making a biopic about Mank in the same way that Mank made a biopic about William Randolph Hearst.
I think it's a slightly exaggerated, fictionalized version of it, but some of it is pretty dead on. But yeah, you're right. It's a Hollywood version, and it suffers from a little syndrome that a lot of these movies do. A lot of stuff in Hollywood. When he's talking to Sheldon about how the awesome power of Hollywood and how it not only reflects but shapes opinion, it's like, really? Wow, you're really... this is another one of those, aren't movies powerful?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the reasons it got so many awards is the Academy loves movies about movies. And it loves movies about how important movies are and the power let's face it, writers love to write about how powerful writers are.
I think it's fair to say that there was some slurping that you could hear in the background here and there.
Yeah,
but, it's on Netflix. So if you've got a Netflix account and you're looking for a film about old Hollywood, sure, why not? If you want to see another great Gary Oldman performance, by all means. I'm sorry, who was the actor who played Marion Davies?
That was Amanda Seyfried. She's terrific.
She is terrific. I like the character too. I don't know how close that is to her, but I like her in this film. So sure, it's a couple hours. Why not?
Yeah. So now we come to business.
Yeah. And don't forget to reiterate that poll question.
I will, in fact, reiterate the poll question even as I speak.
Because Bumpy Hut catalog.
Yes. Sometimes a movie series recasts a major character for whatever reason. An actor leaves, an actor dies, an actor becomes too difficult to work with. Not counting the James Bond movies. When has that really worked well for you, and when has it worked not at all?
I mean, I personally didn't like it when they replaced Daniel Radcliffe with Michael Cera in the Harry Potter films, but whatever.
Oh, I thought that kind of worked,
He's just so moist.
It's just... I don't know, Voldemort. Why? Why are you trying to kill me, Voldemort?
They can't see this, but your hand gestures look like it's Pat. Anyway, so yes, please answer our poll question. And how would they do that, Max?
Why, they could email us at us@maxmikemovies.com, or they could go to our fabulous website to browse the Bumpy Hut catalog at maxmikemovies.com. It has a complete back catalog of it, and leave us a comment with your response. You can also find us and respond to us on social media, on Facebook or Twitter under Max Mike Movies. You can find us. I don't think you can really respond to us via podcasting apps, but that's how you can listen to us. So that's how. Ooh. Or you can call Mike at home. Here's his phone number.
555.
Okay. Yeah. And so, what fabulous biopic do we have coming up next week?
We've been doing this biopic thing for a while, and I think I just need to escape.
To escape, you
yes.
say. So you might say an artist of escaping?
Well, maybe you could just go ahead and ask me how I want to.
How do you want to escape?
Houdini, that's how. Next,
and that's going to cost you 15,000 bumpy bucks.
Oh, my stash! My beautiful stash.
Deducting that from your account now.
Yeah, so we're going to go back in time, which is kind of what we did this week, except it was made last year, to an early biopic. Actually, the film that made me think about wanting to do this series in the first place. It is Tony Curtis, or as you might know him, Bernie Schwartz.
Yep.
As Houdini, the 1953 film, which I checked ahead of time and is rentable from places like Amazon Prime or iTunes or whatever, because we've had that problem recently.
Yeah.
Let's do this movie. Oh, the night before we have to do the show. It's not available anywhere. And you know what's really weird? These places don't accept bumpy bucks. We'll have to fix that.
Strange.
So, next week, escape with us with Houdini.
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.